connecting to the speakers at the moment. So they're trying to reset the board and get all the microphones working. Are they working? No. I can be loud. I recognize that about myself. My name's Lori Wolf. I'm the co-chair of Indivisible MN03. I'm also a college professor, so I'm used to standing in front of a group of people and projecting my voice. So it's okay for me, but for our student panelists and some of our other speakers, I really do think they're going to need a microphone so that, especially the people in the back, maybe the people in the back want to move forward. If we don't get the mics to work, we may not be able to have everyone project, like you two guys all the way at the top of the back may not be able to hear the other people. Can you hear me though? Okay, I am loud enough, but not everyone is going to probably project. And our student panelists, I think 7 of them are going to have a hard time screaming to you. So hopefully, I'm going to keep, no, still not working. I'm just going to keep checking it randomly at intervals. But I do want to be respectful of your time. I know that everybody has things they have to do today, so I want to at least get started, at least with the beginning part of it. I can welcome you here on behalf of Indivisible, and we can do a Pledge of Allegiance, and maybe by then the tech gurus, the people who work their magic with microphones, will have it. We'll have it working by then. Just a couple of words about Indivisible MN03. Many of you are already familiar with us. We are a local grassroots, all-volunteer organization here in Minnesota's 3rd Congressional District. We have partnered with students, primarily high school students, but we have some college students working with us as well, to host this town hall on gun violence prevention. And we would ask that you keep when we get to the question and answer portion of it, if you could keep any of your questions related to that theme, the students would greatly appreciate it. We do have voter registration tables out there. If you are not sure if you're registered to vote, we can look that up online. If you know you're not registered to vote and would like to do that before you leave here today, we can make sure that we get you set up if you didn't already do that. And if you are here and you are not yet 18 or you just turned 18 and this is going to be your first chance to vote, can you just stand up for a moment? How many of you are going to be brand new voters? Okay, that's wonderful. That gives me and I think everybody else here so much hope to see all of you young people getting involved. So welcome, thank you for being here. I'd invite Shruti to come up on the stage now. She was working on our mic issue. Okay, she's back. Just to introduce herself, and then we'll all do a Pledge of Allegiance, and hopefully by then, we will have mics for our student speakers. Otherwise, I'm afraid you're going to have to really talk loudly. Yeah, okay. So there's no mic to hand you. If you just want to introduce yourself, that would be great.
My name is Shruti Srinivasan. I'm a junior at Maple Grove Senior High, and I've been working with Lori and Indivisible to help organize this town hall along with Aberdeen Morrow from Minnetonka.
There she's
and it's been a really great experience, and I'm so happy that all of you are here because gun reform is an important issue, and it's been too long that we've gone without seriously talking about it.
Thank you. Before we do stand for the pledge, I would invite we have people standing in the back. We have plenty of room if you would like to come in and actually commit to staying and grab a seat. If you'd like to just remain on the fringe so you can bail at a moment's notice, then we respect that about you. Go right ahead. All right, thank you. So the flag is over here. If we could just all stand, if you're so inclined. Allegiance. Oh, no mic. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Still no mic. short notice. We gave them about 2 weeks notice to come, and they weren't available, but we have representatives from both of our senators' offices here to read a letter. And I would hand you the mic, but it doesn't do anything.
That's okay.
Can you be loud?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lori, and thank you all for being here. Earlier I was at another town hall that was down in Sunfish Lake, so excited to be able to join you here today and to read a letter from Senator Tina Smith. And you should give me a thumbs up. Dear friends, thank you for inviting me to speak at today's Town Hall for our Lives event. I wish I could be there with you in person to discuss the important issue of gun violence. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet with students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School and students from across Minnesota who came to Washington, D.C. to make their voices heard at the March for Our Lives. These students joined thousands across the state of Minnesota in calling for an end to gun violence. I believe that no student and no parent, teacher, or school employee should have to go through what happened in the Parkland community. Students have the right to feel safe when they go to school. Workers have the right to feel safe on the job, and all Minnesotans should feel safe at the movies, concerts, and places of worship. That's why I believe it is imperative that Congress pass common sense measures that would help reduce gun violence in our community. I support closing loopholes in the federal background check system. I also support and have co-sponsored legislation to reinstate the ban on military-style assault weapons, as well as bills to ban bump stocks and high-capacity magazines. My friend Senator Klobuchar also has a proposal that would make it harder for people who have committed acts of domestic violence or stalking to get a gun. That's a common sense proposal. There's no reason for Congress not to act in the wake of these horrific and alarmingly frequent tragedies. We owe it to the victims and their families. Parkland survivor Cameron Kasky said, "The adults know that we're cleaning up their mess." He's right. Now it's on all of us, including lawmakers, to step up to the plate and do what we can to make never again a reality. Sincerely, U.S. Senator Tina Smith. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Lori and Shruti, and everyone who was involved in planning this. Senator Klobuchar couldn't be here today, but did ask me to send this letter. So, dear friends, thank you for inviting me to this important discussion on gun safety. Although I am unable to join you today, I have recently met with 3 different groups of passionate students to discuss this issue, answer their questions, and march with them at the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. You are a part of a powerful movement that is standing up to say, enough. No more precious lives cut short. No more families torn apart. No more communities plagued by the daily fear of gun violence. The time for action to pass common sense gun safety legislation is now. Not tomorrow, not next month, or next year, but now. Nelson Mandela, whose 100th birthday we celebrate this year, understood what it took to make real change. He once said, "Action without vision is only passing time. Vision without action is merely daydreaming. But vision with action can change the world." You have the vision of the kind of future you deserve, where young people never have to live in fear of gun violence, whether they're at school, or the movies, or the mall, or anywhere in their communities or country. And you are rightly demanding action to make that vision a reality for your generation and every generation to come. That means universal background checks. It means passing the assault weapons ban. And it means preventing dangerous people, like domestic abusers, from getting their hands on firearms. I am honored to be
Oh, the mic still doesn't work. Sorry.
I am honored to be leading the fight in the U.S. Senate to pass a bill preventing those who commit domestic violence from buying guns. It is long past time for us to come together to prevent these heartbreaking acts of gun violence in America. We can, we must, and if you keep standing up, speaking out, and demanding action, we will. Sincerely, Amy Klobuchar, United States Senate.
Now we'd like to welcome to the stage Mia Reinick from Students Demand Action.
Hi, my name is Mia Reinick. I am one of the student organizers for March for Our Lives, and I have been helping with Students Demand Action. Students Demand Action focuses on the students advocating for gun regulation and an end to gun violence. Although we do receive help from Moms Demand Action in every town, this truly is a student-led group. At the moment, the organization for Students Demand Action is a little messy, but we still want students to get involved. If you haven't already, be sure to either sign up outside or text STUDENT to 64433. You will be able to sign up and receive updates on what is going on, as well as other ways to get involved with Students Demand Action. We want this to be more than just Minneapolis and St. Paul. We want this to be a statewide coalition of students who want change. We want students to volunteer for more town halls, whether that be helping or asking the politicians what they are going to do to end gun violence. Students should participate in Lobby Day on April 18th. This is a Moms Demand Action event. On Lobby Day, you go to the Capitol and speak with politicians about what you think needs to happen in terms of gun control. The Moms Demand Action Facebook page has more information on this event. Students, plan a day where you and your peers write to your representatives, organize a voter registration drive with League of Women Voters. If you are of age to vote and have yet to register, register outside or text Youth Vote to 33222. Figure out how you want to be involved and then get to work. Hear from other groups, Students Demand Action that are in other parts of the state. This way there's a range of feedback as well as a strong sense of community. This fight for gun control can be tiring. There are setbacks from politicians unwilling to budge from their NRA donations, politicians not willing to listen to their constituents, not willing to change their agendas, and us students being called names from other students and adults. The people who have joined this fight for gun control may get knocked down, but they always get back up. They are resilient, enduring, and they have hope. The students that I am speaking on behalf of are just that. Each one is hopeful, resilient, and enduring. Students, like many, have seen the countless headlines that share the news of school shootings, shootings in churches, and shootings in concerts. Frankly, us students have had enough of reading these headlines. We do not want this to become the new normal. Bullets ripping through our sacred spaces should never be acceptable. We are in this fight because no parent should worry that they are dropping their child off at school for the last time. No teacher should have to teach their students the best way to hide from the windows in the classroom. And so no student has to worry that their lockdown is not a drill. I read a story about a mother walking into the bathroom to see her young daughter standing on the toilet seat lid. When she asked what her daughter was doing, her daughter responded that it was how she was taught to hide during a lockdown drill, so no one could see her if they came into the bathroom. 4-year-olds should be learning how to tie shoes and be playing on the playground, not being taught how to hide during a lockdown. Teachers should be teaching us about writing papers and how cells work, not talking to us about the most recent shooting. No student should have to text their friends, families, or mentors goodbye from the inside of a closet. Every child should be able to grow up, and each parent should be able to watch their child grow up. Ever since the Parkland shooting, the John F. Kennedy quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," has echoed in my head. As students, what we can do for our country is advocate for stricter gun laws. Some of us can vote, and if you can vote, please vote during midterms. Keep organizing and keep showing up. If the politicians are not doing it, we are. We are the next group of politicians, and we are going to make change. This fight is long. We may be expected to fade away, but the students of Students Demand Action are here to stay, and we are here to create safety in our country. Americans are 25 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than people in other developed countries. This is an issue about safety, not party versus party. Gun violence doesn't affect just Democrats or Republicans, it affects all of us. Leaving our homes should not be a fear-causing experience. Fear should not win, and we are never going to let fear win. Encourage other students to join Students Demand Action. All of our voices are powerful, and when we come together, we are a massive power, and when we form these coalitions, we will be able to make the change necessary. Thank you, and let's get to work.
Thank you so much for that very moving welcome. And next we have from Moms Demand Action, my friend Lana Slavic.
It's a tough act to follow. Again, my name is Lana Slavic, and I'm here today representing the Minnesota chapter of Moms Demand Action. Moms Minnesota chapter is one of the most active in the country, with local groups across the state, including several here in the metro. Along with our friends and partners at Protect Minnesota, we are the grassroots army in fighting for reduced gun violence. We provide education on safe gun ownership, particularly as it relates to children. We propose, identify, and advocate for legislation at the state and federal level to make us safer. We also fight proposed and existing bad gun laws. We have a reputation for showing up. We attend committee hearings at the state capitol, we call our representatives, we write letters to the editor, we're interviewed in newspaper articles and on TV, and we attend protests in numbers at town halls like this one. And showing up with big numbers and continuing to show up is essential to winning this fight. There are more of us than there are of them. In the absence of visible protests, our legislators are able to put forward and pass with impunity the agenda of the gun lobby. Moms is not against the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, however, does not preclude common sense regulation. Moms advocates taking a public health approach to gun violence in order to make guns and gun ownership as safe as possible. We, as a society, have laws related to safe ownership and use of swimming pools, cars, and air travel to a much greater degree than we do guns and gun ownership. Yet access to guns and the high lethality of many of the guns out there today has driven increases in suicide, increases in mass murder, increases in gun violence against women, and gun violence against the police. In states like Connecticut, which have passed comprehensive gun reform laws, we have seen 50% reductions in suicides, gun murders of women by an intimate partner, and gun deaths by police. In states like Missouri, which have rolled back their gun laws, we have seen exactly the opposite. Polls show 9 out of 10 Americans favor basic gun reforms, like requiring background checks on all gun purchases. It's crazy that north of 20% of guns are acquired without a background check due to loopholes. We advocate to close those loopholes. We are also pushing for red flag laws to allow the timely and temporary removal of guns from people that a court determines pose a risk to themselves and others. We have supported legislation in both of these areas at the Minnesota State Legislature, and we also support efforts to raise the minimum age of purchase for all firearms to 21, banning bump stocks, limiting magazine sizes, and appropriating funds to actually study gun violence, among other proposals. We believe that federal laws like the concealed carry reciprocity law voted on by this district's congressman last year.
Do we have a mic now? Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, and we've got some feedback issues, but why don't I just put this up here? See if that helps.
believe that federal laws like the concealed carry reciprocity law voted on by this district's congressman last year are incredibly harmful in that they allow anyone from any state, regardless of a lack of training, to carry a gun in Minnesota if they are allowed that privilege in their home state. You may have noticed that some of the candidates running this year are announcing that they are Moms Demand Action Gun Sense Distinction candidates. Moms is inviting all candidates, regardless of party and past gun stances, to fill out our questionnaire. While this is not an endorsement for one candidate over another, we'll get to that later, it does certify that the candidate has appropriately answered our questions, showing that they agree with our positions on gun violence prevention. I encourage you to support these candidates as you see them. Thank you to Indivisible, MN03, and to the student organizers, including members of Students Demand Action, who put together this town hall. We're grateful for your partnership on this issue. I encourage all of you to sign up for our alerts by texting JOIN to 64433 or STUDENT to 64433. Thank you.
We'd like to welcome Aberdeen Morrow and Sydney Lewis from the West Metro Student Organization.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming out. My name is Aberdeen and I'm from Minnetonka High School. I'm a senior this year.
My name is Sydney Lewis and I'm a sophomore at Eden Prairie High School.
So we're members of this group called West Metro Walkouts. We've partnered after the Parkland shooting with student leaders from Minnetonka, Orono, Wayzata, Eden Prairie, Maple Grove, Hopkins, Chanhassen, and Holy Family to join and take action for gun reform. We're here to motivate our respective students from all of our schools to vote in this coming election, and we're here to hold our representatives accountable.
West Metro Walkout joined thousands of students and adults in March for Our Lives on March 24th. 3 of our organizers spoke at the event. A common theme that I saw at the March for Our Lives was the continuation of this call to action, which all of you guys are helping with when you are here today. This past Wednesday, members of our group met with our current representative, Eric Paulson, and we discussed how he has and has not voted in the past to keep us safe. His responses worried us, and his absence today worries us. We will support candidates, policies, and a congressional body that supports us and our right to feel safe at school. Moving forward, West Metro Walkout is planning many events. On April 20th, we are planning a letter writing and phone calling session to our senators and representatives. We think it's time that they take action instead of just saying that they are going to take action. This will take place at Richdale, Lunds, and Barley's from 4 to 7 p.m. We want students and adults and everybody who is, especially in Congressional District 3, to come and contact your representatives. We are collaborating with several groups to contribute to the growing strength of this movement. West Metro Walkout is proud to be a part of one of the largest youth-led movements since the Vietnam War. Students, it is your life at stake. You must stand up and fight for it. Adults, we took to the streets, and now it's your time to take to the polls. And to anyone who tries to silence or disregard our actions because we are teenagers, look at the history books. Every movement has started with young people. Look in the history books again in 15 years, and you will see us. We are the upcoming voters, and we will change America. Thank you.
We'd now like to welcome to the stage Kristen Pearson and Zoe Larson from Orono High School.
and this is Kristen. We go to Orono Senior High School, and end of February, our school was in a 5.5-hour lockdown, and so we're here to talk about that.
It was 4th hour when a threat of a school shooting had been posted on social media. It quickly spread around the school, and a few minutes later we went into lockdown.
I was in Chinese class when, for some reason, one of my classmates was mindlessly scrolling through Twitter in the middle of class. He read the post to us. Orono is not safe. Today at 12 p.m., I will shoot up the school myself. My heart jumped, and everyone looked at each other with wide, concerned eyes. He rushed to the office, as several other students from different classrooms did the same.
Everyone pretended not to be scared, but it was clear that some were stifling their shaking, others fighting tears. Everyone put on a facade of having no fear, and several people made jokes to lighten the mood.
My Chinese teacher is from Taiwan, and was terrified and shocked that something like this could even happen in America. She quickly shut off the lights, locked the door, and ushered 10 students in class in the safest corner of the room to wait. Within 15 minutes after going into lockdown and having a vague idea of what was going on, I started receiving texts from my friends and family saying that they loved me and hoped to see me soon. Despite this, I was not that worried because I did not actually believe that a school shooting could happen at my school.
The next 5 hours consisted of messaging friends, family, and checking Twitter and other news sources for updates. I was texting my mother, who works in the front office at an elementary school. It struck me that she is one of the first people that you see when you walk in. In the event of a shooting at her school, she would likely be one of the first targets. I was texting my sister, who is at college halfway across the country in D.C. She was asking me several questions and giving me advice on safety. Family members were texting my mother and asking if I was okay. This issue had family from around the country concerned for our safety.
My best friend texted me saying how much she loved me and that she was scared and asking if everything was going to be okay. To be honest, I thought she was being a little dramatic. However, she had no friends in her class and was stuck in a small closet with 10 other people. I was lucky enough to be with a couple friends, as well as in a Chinese class with kids that I had been studying Chinese with for 4 years. However, in our 4 years of studying Chinese, we never bonded quite as much as we did in those 5 hours of uncertainty. I also had a couple other friends. My 2 friends who had happened to stay home that day texted me freaking out about what was happening. One of these friends was extremely concerned because not only were all of her friends at school, but her mom was a teacher as well.
I was Snapchatting a friend who was in the auditorium. The auditorium has 5 entrances and only a couple were locked. He was laying on the ground in the dark behind a curtain for 2 hours. His classmates were so scared they were crying. A center of growth and learning had suddenly turned into a nightmare for them.
My mom had been texting me nonstop, although my dad just texted me quickly asking if I was okay, and that was the extent of our conversation. My mom was working at the local food club, only about half a mile away from the school, and it was flooded with parents waiting for information on their kids. When our principal came over the intercom and said that we were upgrading to lockdown with intruder, I think everyone briefly assumed the worst. But around 5 seconds later, he explained that it was just precautionary, since the shooting had been threatened before that time and there was not a confirmed intruder, and to remain calm. That 5 seconds is what brought it home and made it real for many of the students.
I remember this moment vividly. The world began moving in slow motion. The blood drained from some of my classmates' faces, their calm now turning to fear. An image flashed through my head of an armed intruder stalking around our seemingly safe halls. The feeling of helplessness was palpable, and it felt like something terrible was around the corner. I imagined the possibility of losing my friends and classmates. Looking around the room, I was petrified that they, or even I, might become another statistic. I had never felt this feeling in my school. In fact, I had never felt this feeling at all. Once the moment was over, I finally registered the problem plaguing our country. My mind immediately went to the Parkland students and how the terror I felt for 5 seconds had become their brutal reality. My experience mounted to less than a millionth of what they experienced, but that small sample was enough to open my eyes to what we as students had to do.
We were lucky. All of us survived. It was just a threat and there was no real danger. Our principal handled it phenomenally, and the police department did their job and kept us safe. However, not all schools are as lucky as us. Not all kids get to live through such a blatant threat of gun violence. And that's what we are fighting for. We have the right to learn without fearing for our lives. I think about how scared all of my friends and I felt, and I feel that our fear is unwarranted if you compare our fear to the fear that students at Parkland, Sandy Hook, or Columbine felt. And I feel that our biggest fear was their reality. Even though our experience was, in the grand scheme of things, not that big of a deal, the fact that we have to compare it to something so awful should not be an issue in our society.
Shortly after, I messaged Zoe with an idea to create a student group to fight against gun violence. We and a couple friends began organizing and had a plan working by the time the lockdown was over. After this event, interest had exploded at our school, and a day later we already had 30 people on board. By our first meeting the next week, we had over 60. Our group organized events of our school's walkout, and nearly 400 people participated. So many students in our school were getting involved not out of simple interest, but out of need. They no longer wanted to speak up, but needed to.
Since then, we've been working with various groups dedicated to creating positive change. Several Orono students, including Kristen and myself, went to the March for Our Lives. It was an inspiring experience seeing all the people that cared enough about this issue to come out and demand change, as well as the kids my age or younger having the courage to speak out about such a controversial issue in the face of political backlash. It is truly amazing to see how many of the younger generations are now engaging with politics and working on the issues that past generations have brought upon us. However, it sucks that it took tragedies like Parkland for our generation to stand up and make the change that needs to happen.
We can no longer sit idly by while our politicians ignore the issue in favor of money. So long they covered their trails by sending thoughts and prayers, creating a lie that they care. Students are tired of the excuses. We are tired of our leaders claiming that making guns harder to attain won't change a thing. We are tired of our leaders declaring assault rifles as a right. We are tired of NRA money being prioritized over our lives and sense of safety. We should be working towards a world where students feel safe getting an education, not a world where our schools become heavily guarded prisons.
Our lockdown really opened up our eyes to the reality of American school safety. It created a desire in our school to make a difference and get involved in politics. We hope that our generation is finally able to create the change that has been so desperately needed and reclaim our right to study and learn without fearing for our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your story. I just want to make everyone aware that Eric Paulson's office did respond to our request to be here, saying that they responded yesterday at 12:30, saying that his schedule did not permit him to attend the event. And 6 minutes ago, while our students from Orono were talking about hiding in a closet so they don't get shot at school, Eric Paulson tweeted, "A fun watch, highlights from the Congressional Hockey Challenge." That is what he is currently doing while we're here. Just FYI. Okay. Moving on. It is my pleasure to welcome Austin Berger, who is from our area but currently is a student at the University of Minnesota and is a student senator-elect.
Hello, friends and family of the 3rd District. My name is Austin Berger, and I'm a student senator-elect at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. But more importantly, as of late, I've been a fierce advocate for some common sense gun laws. I helped MC the March for Our Lives at the Minnesota State Capitol with Alex Young Williams and James Farnsworth and countless volunteers. And I'm also pretty sure that I was the only person out of the 18,000 present who thought to bring a bullhorn. I was as surprised as you are. I'm humbled to be here today as your guest and as a man who is deeply passionate about the fight against the epidemic of gun violence in this country. I see some of the same faces in the audience tonight that I saw in the crowd on March 24th at the March for Our Lives, an event that symbolized throughout the state and the broader nation our fighting spirit and resolve to pass sensible gun legislation. The posters that were handed out at the March for Our Lives said it all. Not one more. Not one more life can be lost to this epidemic because our background checks are not enough. Not one more mother can be left inconsolable at the news that her child is not coming home because a disgruntled man was able to get his hands on a military-grade weapon, which he then used to murder innocent young people who had their entire lives ahead of them. Not one more person of color can be disproportionately affected by gun violence due to the leftover vestiges of systemic oppression from the days of Jim Crow and earlier. Not one more. valid reason as to why the state of Minnesota has no restriction on magazine capacities, no requirement to register firearms with the state, and no background checks required for private sales. These 3 items alone should not be controversial for our representatives to support, as they are simple issues of safety and accountability. And last I checked, neither safety nor accountability are inherently partisan concepts. And yet we find ourselves caught in the midst of a polarized era of politics, where elected officials have chosen party over people and the laws they choose to support. People who are against even the most basic gun legislation like to point out from time to time that Democrats sensationalize the issue and get swept up in waves of emotion when it comes to gun violence. They say that students of the Never Again movement are not qualified to speak about this because of our age. To that I say, if you are old enough to get shot, you had better believe you are old enough to have an opinion about getting shot. It cannot be denied. We have a serious problem with gun violence in our beautiful nation. But don't take my word for it. Let me read you 6 statistics. Fact, America's gun homicide rate is 25 times higher than Canada, the next developed nation in gun homicides per 100,000 people. Fact, America has 46% of the developed world's population, but is responsible for 82% of the developed world's gun deaths. Fact, Oxford Academic published a review of over 130 gun violence studies that were conducted by a wide variety of research institutions with varying biases. All of them reached the same conclusion. States that passed more stringent firearm legislation reliably saw a significant decrease in all forms of gun violence. Fact, black men make up 14% of America's population, but are victims of more than half of all gun homicides. Fact, 7 children and teens, another fact about the intersection of racial oppression with gun violence. Black men are 13 times more likely to be shot and killed with guns than white men. That is a problem. And the final fact, 7 children and teens are victims of a gun homicide every day in this country. Let that sink in. 7 children a day do not get to go home to the loving embrace of their families, have their first kiss, get their first job, or have a family of their own one day, all because a gun took their life. These are not alternative facts or fake news. This is real, it is happening right now, and we have to put our foot down and say enough is enough. When I met with survivors of the Parkland shooting at the march, I emphasized to them how proud the people of Minnesota were to share with them, even from a distance, the story of the last 38 days. The typical person would only be able to grieve and not much else after something so vile and heinous. And yet, we saw the best in America shine for all the world to see when these students inexplicably rose above their grief and fought to ensure that this does not happen to anyone else ever again, that those 17 lives did not leave this world in vain. The efforts of the NRA to defame and discredit the actions of these young heroes and the movement they started is an offense not only against history, but an offense against humanity. To try and divide and miseducate people on this issue of morality, not politics, is despicable and abhorrent. But it is the politicians who are complicit or acquiesce to the tasteless agenda of the NRA that enable the nationwide stalemate on passing sensible firearm legislation. People who put dollars above the fundamental safety of their constituents have no place serving in government, and Eric Paulson sold out the people of Minnesota's 3rd District for a mere $20,000 in the NRA. Divide that among the 709,906 residents of Minnesota's 3rd Congressional District, That comes out to be a value of less than 3 cents per person. So I ask everyone in this room, do you think your life or the lives of your children are worth less than 3 pennies? We live in trying, perilous times. While the march was a loud and resounding first step for many of us, nothing will come of all our efforts if we do not get ourselves and our peers out to vote in November. Text a friend. Bring it up in casual conversation, because every vote counts, even if you don't think it does. You can text Youth Vote, all one word, to the number 33222 to get a link to the website where you can register to vote in the state of Minnesota. I can say from personal experience that it took me less than 5 minutes to do so. People fought and died so that you could have this unalienable right. Make sure that you and everyone you know exercises it in the upcoming midterm elections. So, as I close, let me ask you to lift your eyes from the fears of today to the hopes of tomorrow, to the advance of sensible gun legislation in this great state and the entire Union of the United States. Beyond ourselves and the obstacles we face now, to the day where our great republic has saved itself from itself once again by empowering young voters to go out and make tangible, real, lasting change, both with regard to and beyond the matter of gun safety. During the time of the Berlin Wall, John Kennedy once said that all free people, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin, as a show of solidarity. I would say that in the world of today, in the face of the American gun violence epidemic that has stained our nation with the blood of innocents, that we are all citizens of Parkland, Newtown, and Columbine, and that we will stop at nothing to ensure that this never happens again. Not one more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Austin, for those remarks. We will shift now to our student panel, so I'd invite our student panelists to go ahead and come up here on stage, and Shruti is going to be moderating that panel. In the meantime, while we're transitioning, I'm wondering if we have people here who are running for office. I know that we have Dean Phillips and we have Adam Jennings both here. If you are running for office, any office, city council person, school board, could you just stand up so that we could applaud you? Thank you all for being willing to step up and serve. I'll be back there in the back. We can't. I guess Ruthie's sitting in the middle.
Okay, it's fine. We can just pass on. Okay, could you guys just go down and introduce yourself, your school, and why you're here today?
Yeah, so my name is John Lindholm, and I go to the Academy of Holy Angels, which is in Richfield, but I live in Eden Prairie. And I'm here because I'm tired of my voice not being heard. I come from a family that is very Republican, and guns have been a part of my life ever since I was young. We own several guns, and my family likes to use them when they go like at shooting ranges and stuff like that. And I've always not really understood what their need for that was, and my opinions are met with deaf ears around them, and so I want my voice on these issues to be heard by people who are actually receptive to listening.
Hi again, I'm Aberdeen Morrow. I'm a senior at Minnetonka High School, and I'm here because student voices have been silent for too long, and I think that the past couple presidents have left us in security and in safe places with gun reform, but now we are in a place when we need to take action, and the issue is heightening, and we need to change.
Hi, I'm Sydney Lewis. I'm a sophomore at Eden Prairie High School, and I wanted to be on the panel today because, to me, this issue isn't something that you can do just by saying, oh, I support this. Oh, I'm going to go to this event. This is something you need to really immerse yourself in and be a part of.
Hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm a freshman at Minnetonka, and I'm here because I'm sick of the money in politics, influencing politicians. I'm sick of the police brutality, and I'm sick of the school shootings and the enormous amount of them.
Hi, I am Ian Fegler. I'm a senior at Hopkins High School. And so I'm here because I think, bottom line, I just was tired. I was tired of turning on the TV and watching kids get loaded into body bags. I was tired of watching candlelight vigils, and I was tired of watching funerals on TV. So I decided, it's easy to stand by and say, this is wrong. We should be doing something. But for change to happen, it takes good people to finally stand up. So that's what I'm doing up here for you guys.
Hi, I'm Saranya. I'm a senior at Maple Grove Senior High School, and I'm here because I strongly believe that more guns are not the answer to our problem, and I want to see less thoughts and prayer and more real policy change.
Hi, my name is Nihili Abdullahi, and I'm a sophomore at Champlain Park High School, and I wanted to be a part of this panel because I believe that in matters pertaining to this, that one student's voice can truly make a difference.
You guys can just pass on the mic. Okay, I know that Lori brought this up, but how do you guys feel about Paulson tweeting about hockey highlights instead of being at the town hall tonight?
Like almost everything he's done for the past years while he's in office, he showed that he doesn't really care about what people in this district think, and he just wants to stay in DC and continue making money and not listen to his constituents.
You want us all to answer it? Or just... Yeah, I mean, I think we all feel pretty much the same way. Not cool, dude. I've sent in a couple requests for him to be here, and just to make other meetings, and this is the first time he emailed me back, and he emailed me back yesterday, and he said, oh, he's busy. Mr. Paulson has booked tomorrow.
Well, his title is representative, and I feel like... I think to represent a group of people, you have to talk to them and know how they should consider representing them. So I'm gonna go with let's vote him out this November.
Off of what Sydney said, just makes me glad that we're working to vote him out and get other people in office in our district. And I'm honestly not too surprised because he doesn't care about his constituents.
If Eric Paulson was here, I think I would say to him that, sir, as much as I appreciate your conference call town halls, really great, really great. Your lack of accountability is frankly indicative of a larger problem that we have in our country right now, and you frankly don't deserve to be sitting in your seat at Congress.
Eric Paulson is our representative, and he is too scared to be here right now, and that goes to show in itself.
I'd just like to take a moment to look at the irony of the fact that we saw the email right now at this event. That's pretty great, first of all. But I just want to take a moment to really, truly realize that if he believes a hockey match is more important than looking at the lives of students, looking at our opinions, then what's the point?
Okay, so I know the old Osseo School Board Chair floated the idea of arming teachers or having armed volunteers patrol the hallways. How would you guys feel if you walked in and you saw someone in the hallway holding a gun, or your teachers just having guns in classrooms?
School is a place of learning, and guns should not be something that is in that environment. A gun is seen as something that is dangerous, and it implies that there's something that could happen that would put people's lives in danger, and I go to school to learn not to be scared every day.
I mean, if you look at all the statistics, having more guns in a place does not decrease the gun violence. I saw a poster at the March for Our Lives that said, the only way to stop a good guy with a gun is a bad guy with a gun. Sounds like someone trying to sell 2 guns.
If you don't even think about the idea of teachers having guns, if you think about the practicality of it, our government's money could go to so many better things in public schools than arming teachers. I talked to my English teacher, and she told me, she said, buy me paper, buy me pencils, buy me markers, buy me all of these supplies. Don't make me carry a gun, because it's not my responsibility.
I know personally I'm a person of privilege, and walking in to see a gun with my teacher with a gun would not be nearly as frightening to me as it would be to a student of color who is far more likely to be racially profiled. And when there's guns in schools, the threat of racial profiling in school gets so much higher. It's not just getting suspended more often, which is a huge issue in its own, but with guns, it can be an issue of life or death.
Do you think you could give the mic to Nahili so she could talk more about how, as a person of color, she might feel in a setting where teachers might be armed?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Now, I personally cannot speak for every Black person or every person of color, and I've never had to deal with any sort of violence in my life. However, as a human being, I do have empathy, and I do feel the pain of mothers, daughters, brothers, and all the people that have lost valuable friends and family members due to gun violence. It's just the principle of the matter. African Americans and minorities are discriminated upon just by their appearance, not how they think or feel. But please, look at me for a moment, sitting here on the panel voicing my opinion on this matter, and tell me, what's the difference between you and I? What's the deciding factor that makes it 10 times more likely that I would be shot than another one of my fellow panelists? I think that's all I have to say on the matter for now. Thank you.
Aside from arming teachers, MSD recently implemented clear backpacks. Do you guys think these and installing metal detectors, do you think those would be effective measures to keep students safe in schools?
So, right now, what I'm thinking is that instead of addressing the matter of criminals being given the means to kill and take the lives of the innocent, we're truthfully treating the innocent as if they are the criminals by trying to implement those things into the school system. I don't believe that implementing these scare tactics will have a positive impact. I believe that facing the problem head-on by applying a firm hand to gun control is the true solution in and of itself. I also think that we as a society should become more inclusive of each other. Why should there be 2 different sides to this one problem? Black, white, Asian, Latino, we are all humans and we all live in this country, so we as people should unite and take a stand.
Yeah, I think that we need to address the root of the problem, which is guns. There's a lot of reasons why advocates of guns in general are saying that gun violence is happening, but 100% of gun violence is associated with guns and tackling that. And
tackling that with background checks, raising the minimum age, banning bump stocks and assault rifles, and real policy change will ultimately be what creates safer environments for students.
All right, I'm going to be the dissenting opinion. So I think, first of all, they're absolutely right. If we think about gun violence in this country as a disease, unfortunately, our government is focused on treatment and not on prevention. And we should have a systemic shift in how we look at this problem. But that being said, we still do need treatment. I think it can be easy for us to get up here and say, hey, we want to be safer, but then we have to be willing to take ideas on how to make that happen. So for me, I think that while maybe it would make me a little bit more comfortable, I think at some level we do have to start being willing to implement some school safety measures and clear backpacks and metal detectors. That might be a place to start.
I agree as well, but that it's we need to take more preventative steps, but I also believe that some of those, I strongly support gun control, and when we bring up other options on top of that, I think another one we need to consider other than metal detectors and clear backpacks is the culture we have in America that creates this need for guns and this want for guns that you don't see in many other countries.
A student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas created an Instagram account with all of the students' responses to the clear backpacks, and it's one of the best things I've ever seen. It's called MSD Camo 2, and they clearly think that clear backpacks are not the way to go. They're not going to solve this problem. Like they said, that's a treatment, and we need to prevent it from ever even happening. Clear backpacks should never even have to be a thought that crosses through school districts' minds.
My favorite post from that account is a kid who stuck his real backpack into the clear backpack. And you can still get things into school in a clear backpack. So I think they're band-aids for a problem that's much bigger than this, and we need to acknowledge the size of it.
I agree with a lot of what has been said, but one more thing as far as preventing the issue. In a lot of schools, there's a lot of support for mental health initiatives, and that's an important problem in this country, especially for the youth. And providing assistance to kids in schools who are struggling with these issues and may not have anywhere else to go is an important way to increase health in schools and to perhaps prevent tragedies like Parkland from happening.
I know this was kind of brought up when you guys were answering the question, but what kind of measures do you think that your elected officials and future legislators should focus on when talking about gun reform?
Implementing universal background checks and closing loopholes like the gun show loophole, as well as banning assault rifles.
Okay, so Minnesota has, Eric Paulson's been our rep for a while, so it shows that we're kind of a little red. But how do you guys think that we can talk about gun reform in a bipartisan way?
I don't think this is at all a partisan manner, or problem, not manner. I go to a pretty conservative school. We have, there are people walking through the hallways with Hillary for Prison shirts on walkout day. But we still have to be able to converse with those people because gun violence it doesn't just affect Democrats. And it's not only Republicans who have guns, and I don't think it's fair to partisanize this issue.
My stance is really that I acknowledge that I don't have the solution to this issue. There's not just one answer that's going to solve the entire problem, but there is solutions that are out there. The issue is that we aren't even working towards them. We're letting this issue divide us more. And when we do that, nothing will get accomplished, and these school shootings will just become a regular thing, even though they kind of already have. But we need to all come together and find that solution instead of just letting it divide us more.
Yeah, I go to Minnetonka as well, which tends to be a more conservative school, but the numbers we had at the walkout were overwhelming. And it was amazing because it wasn't just specifically for gun control, it was just anyone who wanted to see change. And everyone wants to see change in this country, and so we need to see that happen, so that's how it's
So I'm going to speak to what would I like to see my members of Congress doing. So I think it can be lost sometimes that gun violence is an incredibly complex issue that requires nuanced solutions. And I think something that needs to be on the forefront of our minds is that we should just acknowledge that gun violence has become a public health crisis. And if we do that, it becomes baffling to think about why we aren't letting our public health organizations research this issue, specifically the CDC. So we need to immediately expedite that process and get some research going on that. And then I think another thing we need to focus on is that there are some elements of the gun violence conversation that are frankly very uncomfortable for certain people to have, including me. And one of those is that for a lot of gun violence, we're seeing it in communities that are underprivileged with primarily people of color, and that can be related to gang violence. And we need to figure out how to have those conversations in a comfortable and constructive way. And I think that can help us figure out some solutions.
So on the issue of partisanship, I think that actually has nothing to do with it. One of the most common misconceptions is that law-abiding citizens are going to have their guns taken away, and that's simply false, because the only guns that are being taken away are those, are for people who don't deserve them in the first place, which is why we should have background checks, and everyone should be supporting it, because safety should not be a debatable topic.
So to approach this matter in a bipartisan way, I think we just need to look at facts. BBC found that in 2015, there were 372 mass shootings in the United States alone. That is an overwhelming amount, and definitely shouldn't even be possible to have that many in one country. I think that alone should be a reason for the two parties to be able to come to a mutual understanding concerning the topic of gun control.
Last question, what's it like being a student fighting for gun reform, and what is one or two things that you want the adults in the room to know, and how they could help you in that fight?
So I think that there are a multitude of positive and negative impacts of being a student fighting for gun control. One of the positive effects that it has had was that it gave our generation a feeling of empowerment, a feeling that we can stand up for our own rights and we can do anything that we put our minds to. I think a negative drawback to this was the fact that it just brought the actuality of real life into our minds. It made us come to the realization that this is the world we live in, and that we have to fight for our own lives, and that sometimes not everybody will be for us. They'll be for money or for things that don't matter as much as the life of an actual human being.
I think fighting for gun control as a student is definitely challenging. I actually recently watched a video on Facebook that showed clips of what Fox News aired after the March for Our Lives protest, and it was filled with people saying that we didn't know what we were talking about, and somehow we weren't creating actual change. But my question is, this is the first time in such a great number that we've gotten to create change. So how are we not creating an impact, and why do we not have the voice when other people aren't doing it for us? Yeah, but otherwise the response has been great, just because we are students and people see that, and they're open to, a lot of people are open to seeing us and what we have to say.
I think for so long in politics, young people were kind of this slumbering giant, this slumbering monster, and finally it took a series of tragedies, but that kind of political power is starting to wake up and we're starting to get more active. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So I guess just for the adults in the room, I think I want to thank you guys so much for saying, like, for welcoming us and for allowing us this platform. So keep being supportive and keep welcoming us in, and together we're going to do some great things.
I believe one of the biggest positives is that students who were not really caring about politics in the past are realizing that this gun control issue affects them, and once they start researching this issue, they start looking into other issues, because this issue connects to other ones. It connects to the racism in our country. It connects to the sexism and toxic masculinity in our country, and it relates to the campaign finance issues in this country. And as students start learning more about that, they learn more about these other issues and they become more involved, and I believe that we'll see a lot more activism for my generation, starting with this gun control debate.
Well, this fight is our generation's issue, our whole generation. This is going to be what we're remembered as, is the fighting gun violence in schools generation, which kind of stinks. But I think the main thing that we can ask the adults to do is show us that you support us and get out and vote for people who, if they aren't showing up at town halls, or or if they aren't listening to us, or they aren't showing that they are going to support this issue, then we need to vote them out of office and keep people in office who are going to support us.
I've had a lot of conversations with conservative friends. I have one particular friend who said that she wasn't walking out because she's branded herself as a conservative, and so that doesn't quite align with her reputation that she wants to preserve. And then we started talking about the actual issues and what solutions to this gun violence problem is, and we actually agree on a lot of the same things. So I think that ultimately it's having those hard conversations with people, but obviously most of you in this room are going to vote against gun violence. And so I think we need to continue to have conversations with people who might not be in that position yet. And so to the adults in the room, there are a lot of you, and we need your help to convert people to stand with us at the polls in November.
Being a student opposing gun violence has been a really inspiring experience for me. I remember when my school went to one of the walkouts, we got out in the middle of the day, and I have like 600 kids who go to my school, and there's probably 400 or more of them actually went to the Capitol March. And then about 1,000 more kids showed up from other schools, and we all just marched to the Capitol, and it was a very unifying feeling. Everybody together there supporting the same thing, and we all wanted safer schools. And so I've been very inspired by this, and I hope that that inspiration has been something that is spread from the students to their parents into the whole community, and that especially in November we can show people that this is something that we really care about and we're not going to be quiet about anymore, and people will vote against politicians who support or who do not support gun control and vote them out of office.
Thank you to all of our student panelists. We really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. We're going to transition again to the last portion, which is the audience question and answer with both of our candidates who are seeking the DFL endorsement to run against Eric Paulson. So I would invite Adam Jennings and Dean Phillips on the stage. They'll each have 2 minutes to give brief remarks because we are running behind schedule. Thank you. And then Shruti and I will be wandering around with hopefully 2 working microphones. I'll leave one up here for you all to share. And then at least one other we know we'll have in the audience, and we'll try and see if another one will work so that you can answer questions. But just so everyone knows, I just picked alphabetically because it made it easier. So we're going to start with Adam Jennings' remarks, and then after your 2 minutes, we'll have remarks from Dean Phillips, and then we'll turn it over to audience questions. So if you would like to ask a question, Shruti and I will be walking around, and we will just wave at us, and we'll come over if we can. And we're going to first prioritize our students who are here who would like to ask questions. Okay. Thank you.
I was all ready for rock, paper, scissors, but yeah. Wow, tough act to follow. If we could get another round of applause, actually, for the high schoolers that have come out. And one thing that I want to point out that's extremely important, Ian had talked about how we welcomed him and we were giving him this space. And I would actually contend the beautiful thing that we are seeing from these students right now is that they're taking it. We're not giving it to them. They are providing true leadership all across this country, and it is a beautiful thing to see. Now, I'm here today. This is a picture of my daughter, Dorothy. She is 5 years old, and she started kindergarten this year. She came out this fall, and she told my wife, Mommy, don't worry, because I have the bestest hiding place in the classroom in the event that a bad man comes into the school. This is my daughter. She's 5 years old. This is completely unacceptable. This is not the kind of thing that we need to have in elementary schools. And I don't know if this camera back here is a Republican tracker or not. But Eric Paulson, what are you going to do to protect my daughter? He's not. We need to pass that along to him, though, because he can respond to us via email and chalk this up as a town hall for him. So I just, how am I doing on time?
You have 40 seconds.
40 seconds. The one thing I just want to say real quickly is I've had some experience with weapons. I spent 8 years in the Minnesota Army National Guard. I fired the M4, the M9, the M203, the M249, the SAW. But the weapon that was issued to me while I was deployed was an M16. Standing orders were, it couldn't be more than an arm's length away from you the entire time you were in country. These are weapons of war. The courts are upholding that they are weapons of war. We need to ban them. We need to get them out of our system, and I'm at time. So thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I want to thank each and every single one of you here, particularly the students and our organizers. And yes, Adam, that is a Republican tracker. And I'm glad you're here, because I hope you will send this tape to Eric Paulson and to every single member of Congress who lacks courage to do what they're supposed to do. Enough. That's why we're here. I've lived in Minnesota my entire life. I grew up in the 3rd District. I've lived in the 3rd District for many years. And this is a very memorable day, actually, because that cardboard cutout of Eric Paulson is the very closest I've ever come to seeing the man. You know, thoughts and prayers do not save lives. Action saves lives, everybody. In 1934, when we had a massive crime wave because of Prohibition, we passed the National Firearms Act in 1934. 1968, after the assassinations of John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and many others, we again took sensible action. 50 years later, everybody, 50 years later, we have a national crisis, and there is no action in Washington. And if Congress will not make changes to save our kids' lives, I will support you in changing Congress, everybody. I promise. We need universal background checks, everybody. We need an assault weapons ban. We need mental health professionals in every single school in this country. We need anti-bullying programs in every single school in this country. Congress finally allowed the CDC to study this issue, but they did not mandate it, and they did not provide one penny, of which I see sitting on the floor right here, to provide funding to do so. And last but not least, everybody, if we do not change campaign financing in this country, nothing is going to change. And And if you have 2 minutes tonight, Google the name Mark Dan, the former AG in Ohio. He wrote an op-ed piece in the Cleveland newspaper that expresses how the gun lobby owned him. If you want to see what needs to change, read that piece, everybody. Mark Dan. We are going to make changes, and it's coming. Thank you.
Does mine work? Good, we have 2 working microphones in the audience. And Shruti, do we need another one? Oh, okay. So, are there students here who would like to ask a question? Can you, Shruti, go over on that side, and I'll try. Anybody over here? Okay. So while Shruti walks over here, I'm closer to some of our panelists here.
Thank you guys, first of all, for being here and taking some questions from us. So my question is that obviously voter participation is very important to amplifying the voices of young people like myself who are kind of taking the leadership of this movement. Mike, oh, is it not on?
It's not on.
How about now?
No, it's not.
Oh, hey! Okay, so I'm going to quickly do that again. Voter participation is very important to amplifying the voices of young people who are helping to lead this movement. How do you plan on breaking down some historic barriers of young voter participation in this country and encouraging young people to get out to vote? Thank you very much.
And how much time? Okay.
It's a great question, and it actually comes up a lot because it's not only our young voters, it's our minority communities as well, and we need to make an active effort to reach out to them and know that they are part of this process. Now, if there was something good that came out of Parkland, it's the fact that there's this wave. I mean, we expected 8,000 people to come to the March for Our Lives event at the state capitol, and we had 18,000 people show up. So as representatives, we need to be present, and we need to ensure that we're part of that when these things happen. And we need to continue to have town halls and continue to engage and continue to make sure that our young people are coming out. And some of that is just how we use our technology too. So much of what we're doing right now is commercials, and kids they're not watching commercials. So we need to utilize different avenues, different channels to make sure that we're reaching people adequately using the correct technology. And I think that's where I'm at. So thank you. Good question.
So I'm a father of 2 teenage daughters, and usually when I ask them to do something, they do just the opposite. So I'm going to turn this back on you. Every one of you who attend high school in this room are the most powerful in this room right now to affect the question that you just posed. Please ask your friends, whether you're 18 or not, 17-year-olds, going to be 18 to vote, pre-register. Encourage your friends, encourage the people who are going to be off in college when November comes around to vote absentee. And I ask you to do that, because that's how we're going to affect change. There are a lot of 18-year-olds who are going to be voting for the first time in this district and around the country, everybody. That's exciting. And I've got an extraordinary campaign team of 10 people, 3 or 4 of whom spend every day doing what you're talking about. Engaging people, energizing people, educating people about how we can participate. And if this is any evidence of what's coming, everybody, we're in good position, let me tell you. So, and lastly, I'm a candidate who, of course, I would love to earn your support, especially you students. But I'm here to actually support you. And I ask that you tell Adam and me, I see Kelly Morrison in the room, Patty Acomb in the room, Heather Adelson in the room, Austin, who just ran for and just won Senate at the University of Minnesota in the room. Tell your electeds and those running for office, tell them, and let us know how we can support your effort, because you are the ones affecting change, everybody. Adults haven't done it. And it's up to you, and that is what makes me so optimistic and so hopeful about what's going to transpire in November. So thank you. Let's get it done.
Hi, my name is Effie Cosette's sister, and I'm 9 years old, and I'm here because there have been too many school shootings, and I would like that to stop. Can you help me keep my school safe.
I didn't hear your name, honey. What's your name? Effie. So Effie asked how we're going to keep you safe. And that's why we're all here. None of you, nobody should live in fear. And in the United States of America, we take action to protect our own. And we're spending a whole lot of time and resources, everybody, trying to protect ourselves from threats that, in my estimation, are not nearly as acute and existential as the one that you're talking about right now. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a bunch of things. Everything that Adam believes in, everything that I believe in, everything that everybody in this room believes in, and frankly, everything that everybody in the 3rd District believes in, we're going to get done, which is protecting people's lives. I promise you, I will not rest, Adam will not rest, there's not anybody in this room that will rest until we know you are safe. And you are safe right now, let me assure you. We're taking steps every single day to make it better. And that means action. And I'm so grateful that you came here today because there are some students a little bit older than you, but I hope you're going to be part of them someday really, really soon. So thank you very, very much.
Let me just say thank you for asking the question. It takes a lot of courage to come up and do that. And all of those people clapping right now, they're with you. I'm with you. Dean's with you. We are all with you on this. And what we are going to do is we are going to flip this district. We're going to flip this district. We're going to make Eric Paulson go find a new job. And then we're going to pass some laws that make sense in this country. And we are going to take it to the NRA. We're going to make sure we don't, we're going to outlaw the assault weapons, the bump stocks, the silencers. But more importantly, the one thing that I want to throw out, because that I don't think we talk enough about, is I actually want to ban the replacement parts on AR-15s. Let's turn AR-15s into paperweights over time. Let's have a buyback program here federally. I want to buy back the weapons, melt them down, and turn them into thumbtacks. Let's sell them and try and take care of the deficit the Republicans just gave to us. So I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off deficits, all kinds of things. But I can assure you that we have your best interests at heart. And I will do absolutely everything to make sure that you, these kids, my children, are safe in schools.
How will you work with the Republicans to get gun legislation passed?
It's a great question, because what's interesting is that we need a bipartisan solution, and I like the concept of a bipartisan solution, but it assumes that everybody's at the table during the negotiation. And the Republicans have made this a partisan issue. The way we win on something like this is that we take control. We take control, and then we pass sensible legislation, and we push it through, because if there's one thing that Democrats haven't been doing, we have not been utilizing the strength that we have when we're in power. And we need to be significantly more full-throated about what it is we're going to do. And we're going to go in, and we're not going to nibble around the edges. It's not going to be bump stocks, so Paul Ryan can feel better about being a congressman. It's going to be all of it. It's going to be. Let's ban assault weapons. It makes sense. Let's get rid of silencers. Let's get rid of bump stocks. Let's universal background checks. No fly, no buy. Let's pass single-payer universal health care so everyone can have mental health care. It's just, we have to operate from a position of strength when we are in power. Our first job is to make sure that we're boxing Donald Trump in after we flip the entire House in 2018. And then in 2020, let's get him out of there, and let's take control and get some things done.
So the question is, how would I work with Republicans to effect the change that we all desire? All of you know we have a constitution that designed a system of governance that is intended to make change difficult. And boy, does it work. works very effectively. That means it's a responsibility to find ways to collaborate. And I'll tell you, one of the great epiphanies of my campaign so far is recognizing that as I meet with Republicans and independents and Democrats and libertarians and everybody across the board in this district, we mostly agree on the outcomes, everybody. We mostly agree on the outcomes. Cleaner air, cleaner water, better public schools, safe streets, a safe country, better health care, higher quality at a lower cost, and gun violence. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things, please. Let's start the conversation by talking about gun violence prevention. If you want to end a conversation with the Republicans that we do have to work with if we want to affect change, use the word control. It ends the conversation. The outcome is gun violence prevention, and more comprehensively, violence prevention. And the way to do so, because residents of the 3rd District and around this country, in fact 90% almost of this entire country, Republicans and Democrats, want universal background checks. The reason it doesn't happen is the gun lobby, everybody, and the lobbyists generally. The money in politics is what prevents it from happening. There are thoughtful Republicans. Many of them live in this district. They want their kids safe in school, just like I do, and just like you do. So we have to agree on the outcomes and then work our way backwards, and we can do it. And a lot of what some Republican thinking is proposing is right. We need better mental health care in schools and around this country. It transcends this issue. We need anti-bullying programs. There are human issues. And we need to complement that with what I know everybody in this room wants to see too, which is less access to those weapons of war. And we can do it, but we need to send people to Congress from both sides of the aisle who are willing to go and get the work done for people instead of party.
So my question is for both of you. You both been talking about the universal background checks, been going on how we need to improve that status here in North America and how we should implement this more. But how are you going to prevent the loopholes into this? Because private arms dealers and sellers do not have to have universal background checks. And businesses that sell firearms that are also private and corporations don't have to have universal background checks. So how will you be preventing this here in Minnesota?
And you're right, and that's why the notion is universal background checks. That means there are no loopholes anymore. That's exactly, I think, what we're both talking about. Which, in fact, some of you might know this. In the state of Minnesota, if you're 14 years old and you live outside of an urban area, outside of a municipality, you can acquire a long gun in a private transaction, no questions asked. 14 years old. You can't drive till you're 16, you can't vote till you're 18, and you can't have a beer until you're 21, but you can buy a shotgun when you're 14. It's, in my estimation as a parent, I don't like that. And universal background checks are designed to close all the loopholes and ensure that if you wish to acquire a weapon in this country, a firearm, that you're subject to a very general background check. But we have to complement that with a system that identifies people that should be subject to those checks and precluded from acquiring a firearm. This is a systematic issue, and we do need to collaborate with everybody in this country to ensure it works. You know, Fix NICS is another example, that relies on the data that is provided to the system. But that's what universal background checks means, is that we do close those loopholes and ensure that anybody who acquires a weapon is subject to at least a check.
And I would second all of those sentiments completely, and we need to have additional legislation too around the gun shows themselves. I don't think those make sense. That's where a lot of those transactions take place. Let's just make sure that you have licensed dealers that can sell these, and that's where all the transactions happen. But I do want to circle back around real quickly to what we just talked about. You know, taking the outcome. We all want the same outcomes, right? It's harder than that, because the Republicans, when you take your first step backwards, a lot of them want to start arming our teachers. They want to make sure that everybody's got a sidearm. Their solution to decreasing gun violence in this country is to make sure that everybody has a gun. So this is one reason we have to have a goal in mind, and we have to push back and make sure that we fight for the things that we believe in. There was something else I was going to say, and I'm blanking right now. But I've got a minute, so I can wait you out. It'll come back to me, but I think it's extremely important for us to recognize that fact. This is what it was. I can prove to you why it's difficult to make this a bipartisan situation. The Republicans have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the presidency. Where's the legislation on mental health care right now? Where's any legislation at all? Congress started to talk about it, and then what happened was it transferred over to the Justice Department because apparently our AG was looking at this back in December, even though they never said anything about it. So I think it's a bit of a red herring, and I think we need to call them on it. And it's important to fight for the things that we believe in and bring them to the forefront. Thanks.
Firstly, I'd like to thank both of you for being here when our congressman unfortunately couldn't make it due to a hockey game. So my question
Jerk. And a coward, just if you're getting that.
With the NRA using fear tactics and notions like Democrats trying to take away all guns, using that to really drive gun sales, how do you plan on getting around that fear-related message and really trying to connect with voters?
That's a great question. The other thing that I want to point out right now, that the only person in this audience that has said anything that's near belligerent is me. So that's a poor excuse as well, Eric. Everyone here has been extremely respectful. So what you distinguish between here is we basically, there are lots of gun enthusiasts, but there are a lot of hunters. I know a lot of hunters, and they understand this. If you're going to go out and you're going to hunt a deer, you're not using an AR-15, right? You're using something that's sensible. If you've got a shotgun, it allows you 5 shells if you're hunting for something big. If you're out going for pheasants, it allows you 3. So this is about making sure that we're addressing the hunting community and making sure that, hey, we're not interested in coming after your guns. There are a lot of long, deep traditions in this country within families who hunt and respect the animals, and it's okay. That the Second Amendment protects that. It's redefining what military weapons are in this country. My personal belief is, if you want to fire something like an AR-15 and M16, go join the military. Otherwise, you don't get one. But that's what this is about. And the great thing, this gives me hope, is the courts are already picking it up. Massachusetts just passed something, just ruled on this last Friday, where they indicated that AR-15s and assault weapons are not protected by the Second Amendment because they are designed to kill people. So that's where we win. It's about having sensible conversations with people out there that hunt versus people who are scared. Thank you.
Well, in my estimation, the 2 biggest drivers, emotional drivers of human activity, are hope and fear. And the NRA has used fear exceedingly well to divide this country. In fact, I would argue that we have foreign operatives that have recognized how successful their tactics are and are doing the same thing to try to divide this country. I'm running for office because I believe hope will transcend fear, everybody. I believe hope will transcend fear, and this is where it begins. Who is stronger, this room or the NRA? This room is stronger than the NRA. And I'm disappointed that this room isn't full today, to be honest with you. If we did this a year ago, there'd be 15 people here. Today there are 250 people here. Next time we show up, I want 500 people here. That's how we change it. That's how we change this country. That's what Donald Trump gave us a gift. He gave us the most extraordinary gift of my lifetime. He gave us the most extraordinary gift of our lifetime. Participation. I stood up because I've had enough. Adam stood up because he had enough. Millions of people like you are standing up because they've had enough. Thousands of candidates around this country standing up because they've had enough. And people will join the principled bandwagon if we give them a chance and if we extend the invitation. So let's do the human thing and extend invitations to thoughtful people, regardless of their political parties. Hope. Everybody, hope. And it begins right here. That's how we're going to change this culture. And it begins with all the students who are doing it for us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hi. One question I have is looking at the demilitarization of our nation, looking beyond just the bounds of gun violence in our schools and looking at our police force and the use of ICE and all these military tactics to try and enforce justice.
And was there a question? I missed the question.
Okay, yeah. So I guess my question is, how do you guys feel about that, and what do you guys want to do about demilitarization if you're in support of that?
So, we are the land of the free. This is the United States of America. And the great challenge we will always face is the intersection between safety and freedom. And I do not want to live in a militarized country. I want my kids to be safe in school, but I do not want them to have to pass through rifles and long guns and metal detectors and live in a society that requires that. And that's why I believe that there is good thinking all across the spectrum right now in what we have to do. Some of it we've discussed today, some of it we haven't. But it does begin with a cultural shift. And it does begin with hope and expectations of how we behave as a people and as a nation, internally. None of us in this room can go to Congress and wave a magic wand and address this issue alone. Not one of us. The President of the United States of America cannot do it, and thank goodness he cannot. It does, everybody. It begins with us. You are more powerful collectively than the United States Congress. That is a truth. And you personally are, because you're starting this conversation. I do not want to see a further move to the right and thinking that by arming everybody and arming schools, although I do believe parents and children would feel safer if they knew there was somebody at a school who is trained in defense and to protect the school. I do believe that. How many teachers are in this audience today? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you believe that we would be safer if you had a handgun on you? Not a one. Right? Right. So none of us want that. But it is our job to spread the word, everybody. Thank goodness we live here in the 3rd District. Thank goodness we live in Minnesota with wonderful blessings. Let's use them, everybody. Let's use them and spread the word nationally, beginning with sending one of us to Congress and starting the change.
Good to see you again. You're my NDA question in Chaska. I echo a lot of what Dean's saying, but again, this is one of those things where it's tricky. I mean, it is tricky. The minute we start the conversation, because I look at going to Congress as starting a new job. It's like anything else I've ever done. You know, you don't know exactly what you're getting into. You don't know the personalities that you're working with, and team dynamics have a lot to do with it. When you sit down at the table, you're going to have to negotiate. But if you're going to negotiate, you're going to negotiate effectively, you come in with goals and you say, this is what I want. And that's where you start from. And that's how we have to approach this issue, because it's been far, far, far too long since we've done anything about it. So specifically with regards to militarization, we shouldn't do it. Obama had a program that he had put in place that prevented the sale of armaments to local police departments. And I think we need to re-implement that, because Trump signed an executive order taking that away. And it makes absolutely no sense. A police department does not need a bayonet. There are bayonet sales out there. They're basically the personnel armored carriers are being sold to police departments. That needs to end. And sitting in Congress, it's one of those things, we can pass a law that makes that illegal so that an executive order couldn't override it. And that's what we need to do when we go up there. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you both. I just want to quickly say we are obviously running over time, and I know some people have to go, so thank you all. We are going to keep going with a few more questions, though. Hopefully our candidates are willing to stay for a couple more questions. I know we have a hockey game to get to. Actually, I do have a hockey game. I have Frozen 4 tickets for tonight. So funny you say that. So we're going to have one question here, and then 2 questions from students over there, and then I think we'll have to wrap up just due to time.
He's saying bad joke, apparently.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm a public school teacher in this district. I do not want anyone armed in my building, and I do not want a gun. I stand up in front of a class of all children of color, and as a white woman standing in front of them, I do not want a gun, nor do I want anyone armed in my building. What I do need and want is access to quality mental health care for my students. It is their birthright and they are not receiving it. And I want to know, if you are elected, how are you going to help me get my students the quality, dependable mental health care that they deserve?
It's a great question. Public education is one of the major platforms in my candidacy right now. The first thing that we do, because I've talked to a number of school board members all across the district, a number of superintendents. In Congress, we need to fully fund the special education mandate, which was passed in 1972. That opens up a floodgate of funds for school districts, millions and millions of dollars. And that puts schools in a better position to address that. But I was amazed that there actually weren't specific dollars allocated for this at the federal level, and we need to have that conversation as well. But in addition to that, and I know I said this before, if we were to pass single-payer universal health care, Medicare for all, that provides mental health care for everyone, their families included, because a lot of these kids, they're coming to the doorstep because things are happening at home. People are hurting economically, they're self-medicating with drugs, they're descending into mental illness, it's having an impact on the kids. They don't necessarily have enough to eat. So absolutely anything that we can do to get more funding in the schools makes sense. Now, at Parkland, they had armed guards there, and nothing happened. And being in the military, you have to train again and again and again and again and again and again and again, and you still mess it up. And it actually scares me to death that you have an armed guard that's going to fire this thing maybe once a year to qualify, wandering around my kids. I don't want that either. And police departments have fantastic response time in the 3rd District too. I know the police department for our district, their response time is like within a minute if they get a call. So we can still respond to this and make sure that we're allocating the resources effectively. So thanks.
Well, this state and this district have played an important role in at least moving towards what we're talking about. Senator Paul Wellstone argued vehemently for mental health parity in this country. Didn't get to see the day when it was achieved. Congressman Jim Ramstad, who represented this district for many, many years, is the one that carried that ball over the finish line. And that's the legacy of this district. I would argue that we still do not have mental health parity in this country. I think that's fair to say. This issue transcends this conversation about gun violence. This country would be a better one if we valued mental health as much as we did physical health. And I believe that begins in schools. And yes, IDEA, which has been woefully underfunded for 40-some years, and makes all of us in this room, in this district, pay about $150 million a year in unfunded federal mandates. Yes, that should be fulfilled, and we should use those resources to ensure that every school in this country has robust mental health professionals on staff to ensure our children have robust mental health provision. Plain and simple. Teachers in this room, I honor you as much as I do any profession in the entire world, but most of you were not trained to provide the services that these children need. And I recognize that. I would ask every educator in this room, in fact, everybody in this room, if you have ideas on how we can do so. I do believe this can be achieved, and it does require bipartisan work, and I do believe it's actually a unifying issue that this district will support and can. My family just made an investment in a local school that when teachers came to us and begged for resources to ensure that they had somebody who could provide mental health services to their children. The fact that the school district didn't or couldn't was appalling. But it should not be predicated on philanthropy. This should be collective philanthropy from the United States of America, and we should send people to Congress to get it done.
I think everyone in this room can agree that we need meaningful change now in order to make sure that Parkland is the last school shooting. In the event that Democrats are not able to take back the House, which Republicans would you work with to pass gun violence prevention measures?
As we both referred to, there is a sad dearth of principle right now, I would argue, in the Republican Party. Our Constitution anticipated a president like Donald Trump. It did not anticipate a Congress with so many who lack courage, and that is the root of our problem right now. And I'd like to believe if Donald Trump had run as a Democrat, which he used to be, and had won, that people in this room, myself included, would be standing at the gates of the White House every single day objecting to his management of this country. And I find it appalling that the only time I see any courage demonstrated tends to be by members of Congress who have announced their retirements. That is the problem, everybody. I will work with any member of Congress because Republican members of Congress have children who have died because of gun violence, who have committed suicide because of guns, who have lost friends, family, and loved ones. They are no less or more subject to the same thing that we are here to discuss than any one of us. I will work with anybody. And I'm telling you, everybody, I meet with these people every day. This is not, as this little program says, this is not a Democratic issue. This is not a Republican issue. This is an American issue. We have a responsibility to work with anybody who is willing to protect lives. And damn it, if they refuse, we have to start with state legislatures. And that's why I'm so thrilled to see candidates in this room. We have got to flip our legislature. We have got to keep the governorship blue. And we've got to start from the inside and work our way out.
So the one thing that I'll point out too that I take heart in, Lana said it, Dean said it, we got them by the numbers. We are going to have, we're going to win by the votes this time. We got it. So we just need to continue. The mindset we need to have is that we're going to win. We win. Talk, everyone in this room, talk to every single person you know and get them out to the polls if they aren't going already. Now, if we don't get it, I will knock on every single representative's door in Congress, and I promise you that. Politicians promise a lot of things, but I do promise you that I will work tirelessly to make sure that we get something done. Now, on our drive over, because this sits home closely with me, I was talking to my wife about this, and it was just like, honey, how was your week? You know, and she's a pediatrician, and she had 2 conversations this week alone with patients of hers who are contemplating suicide. She finds herself in a position where she's having to have a conversation on a very frequent basis about, are the guns secure in your home? Where do you have access to guns? And it's an epidemic in this country, and we need to do absolutely everything when we can to take care of it, and that's why I will work. And like I said, when we're in power, I'm going to take it. We're going to go in and we're going to start putting out some marching orders on things. If we're not in power, you're in a position where you have to work with the other side. You're forced to. But that's the whole point with this, is that we should too often as a party, and I've said this so many times, that when we are in a position of authority, we don't use it effectively. We shrink back before we have even gotten to the negotiation table, and that's important.
So it's obvious that minorities experience the majority of gun violence in America. What are you both, as white males, going to do to make sure that the minorities are protected?
That's a great question. And we have institutional racism in this country, and we need to address it. First and foremost, this is about communities, and this is about dialogue. And we need to provide funding at the congressional level so that police departments can have deliberate conversations with their communities, and you work locally with your expertise. You bring out outside expertise as well to help with this, but create a dialogue so you can start building some bridges in those communities. But there are other pieces of this too, that it's the communities themselves that are locked out and don't have access to equity. They can't build dignity in their own lives in a lot of cases because they don't have the ability to make ends meet because they can't find a job. We need criminal justice reform. And part of that too is just we've got too many people that are locked up in prison right now for innocuous, ridiculous crimes. We need to legalize marijuana. If you're sitting in prison, you should go. If you were ever prosecuted for it, you should take it off your record. It's people get locked out of the system because when they get out of prison, they can't vote, they can't sit on a jury. If they fill out a job application, they have to say whether or not they were a felon. You know, if they're trying to find a place to live, they have to say the same thing. And there's a reason that we have high recidivism rates in this country, and it's because we're creating a pipeline, especially in minority communities, where it's just, it's birth to prison. And that's what we address. And it's about equity, it's about criminal justice reform and taking the power away from the prosecutors and putting it back in the judiciary. It's about rewriting our laws. And that's how we're going to get it done.
I've heard countless complaints in the last number of weeks from the communities of color in which I spent a lot of time, wondering why it took a shooting in a predominantly white high school in Florida for this issue to be elevated. And they're darn right, because violence in communities of color has been going on for generations, and we have not paid attention to it as long as it doesn't come into quote unquote the suburban backyard. And that's the truth. And I'm not going to tell you that there's a policy or an idea or anything actionable that can end that tomorrow. There's not. And don't listen to anyone running for office or who serves in office that tells you it is. But the reason that I'm a Democrat is I believe if we take action in the foundational areas of decent humanity, ensuring that people have affordable housing, ensuring that every child in this country is afforded a world-class public education, not just some. Ensuring that their guardians or parents or parent is afforded a livable wage for hard work. Assuring that guardian or parent has a family leave policy if necessary. Ensuring that family or guardian and children have health care provided whenever it is needed, no matter their ability to pay or where they live or what their income is or their condition or their geography. And if we do not attend to these issues, nothing we have talked about today will ever be resolved. That's why we're Democrats, everybody. That's why we are Democrats. And you know the words of Hubert Humphrey. A government should be measured by how it treats those in the dawn of life, in the twilight of life, and in the shadows of life. That's why we're here, that's why change is coming, and that will be how we resolve every issue that is important to every single one of us.
Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, I know there's lots of questions, but we have to be out of here before 4, because that's when our lease expires. So, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and let's do this in November.
I have a couple of announcements, though, if you don't mind. I just want to let you know some things that you can do to continue to work on this issue and to stay involved. If you would like to join Moms Demand Action with their lobby day coming up on April 18th, there's flyers out in the lobby, or you can talk to anyone wearing a Moms Demand Action t-shirt. If you'd like to join the West Metro Student Walkout Group, they're doing a letter writing and phone banking campaign. That will be on April 20th at Ridgedale Lunds Byerly's, 4 to 7 p.m. And they have information out in the lobby and a donation box if you'd like to help support the students' work. And then Indivisible's next event is on April 28th from 1 to 4 at Riley Lake Park. It's just a membership gathering, so everyone's invited to that. Thank you again, everyone. If you were a student speaker or other participant in the panel up here, could we get a quick photo before everyone leaves? Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your attendance.